and welcome back to Hyperbaric Living Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Masha. Today I have with me Dr. Kelly Ryder. Dr. Kelly Ryder is a board-certified doctor of chiropractic and absolutely brilliant clinician who's helped thousands of patients regain their health. He specializes in concussion, and today we're going to talk about military syndrome. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You've been on the show before. We talked about concussion syndrome. If you're interested, please search through the episodes. We have a really good description. What is concussion, how to get it diagnosed, and what you can do for treatment. Today, we're going to talk about military syndrome. What is military syndrome?
So it's where soldiers from the infantry divisions to the elites are really exposed to multiple blasts, the chronic load of stress. So the PTSD, we're going to be talking about how their brains and their endocrine systems and their gut systems start to basically turn on them and cause metabolic crisis inside their body. And so it starts a major tailspin of them basically falling from elite level health to, this person who is just looking like they're overweight, they're fatigued, they're tired, they're going into a downward spiral, both mentally, physically, are just falling apart, right? So what's kind of unique about what I call military syndrome is that these people have been exposed to multiple blast injuries, from whether it being from air support or ground support, from grenades being, dropped too close to them, and they get the sucking and the blowing of the explosion. So the brain kind of takes two rattles if you effectively want to look at it. What happens is when the explosion starts to ignite, it has a sucking property, and then when it explodes, it has a blowing property, right? So the brain shifts one way and then it rattles the other way as a sound wave comes back. And what we're knowing now with science, working with some Army guys and Marines and Air Force, is that the somatosensory somatomotor cortex is the one that gets rattled the most, right? So now we're talking about vision input. We're talking about how depth perception. We're talking about how you actually see objects and what your brain actually sees. So all these somatosensory, somatomotor, how you move, right? And how you coordinate movement are off in these individuals. Well, in special operations, it's very important that these guys, part of camouflage is that you have to be silent walking, and so that's motor coordination from heel to toe, or walking soft, but being very efficient at movement through doors and close quarter combat. And so we now understand that somatosensory somatomotor cortex also has the primary responsibility of delta wave, right? So, and we know that the role of delta is to make us sleep, repair, regenerate, right? Alpha then has to respond, right? So when delta goes off, alpha has to respond, and it starts causing the, anxiety, PTSD effects. And then you've got the amygdala and the hippocampus that are talking to each other. So that's why their memory goes off, right? So it's just a cascade, a neurometabolic cascade of effect that happens in these individuals that ultimately leads to why, in the United States, soldiers are killing themselves every 22 seconds. So, it's a true crisis, right, that needs to be dealt with. We've got these guys that are coming home, and yeah, they have the VA, Veterans Affairs that are trying, but again, the pure mass numbers are not going to be able to help the way they really need to. So it's going to be physicians like you and I, who, these people come in and they're like, man, I'm tired. This is what's going on, because it looks like mental health, but it's not, right? It's brain health. And so, these people have been exposed to things that their body's finally going to respond to on their allostatic load, right? And so their brain can only take so much. And then when their brain, they don't know what's going on, and then they start trying to self-medicate, right? So their brain is sped up, and then they pour alcohol in it, and then they try to do it with alcohol a lot, right? So that's a downer. And so what happens is the crazy, quote unquote crazy, goes on between the highs and the lows. And if they keep bouncing back faster and faster and faster, that's actually what causes the quote unquote mental health with these individuals to be, off, and they do things that they typically would not do.
How fast after being exposed do they normally develop the symptoms?
So that's the crazy part, is depending upon how big the explosion is, right? And how many times they've been exposed to multiple explosions, right? So we think that one big explosion, that could probably rattle you pretty good. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's kind of like what we know about American football. It's the little dinks, right? It's the little hits that add up to big hits. So, how many times, have they been near an explosion where they go, whoa, man, that got me, because if they do that shimmy from the explosion, they've been hit with a sound wave, right? And they've been affected in somehow, some way. Now we have to figure out, is it affecting their sleep? Is it affecting their gut microbiome, right? Have they noticed their stool changing? Have they noticed that sleep cycles are off? Have they noticed, weight gain? Have they noticed the insulin like stuff happening, right? So it's crazy for me that the military, we know that this is happening, but we just don't know how to deal with it. And right now, the special operations community has people that are more focused on it because there's not that many in the grand scheme of things, special operations guys. But my background is that you got far more people coming back home into the States that have served in the military that are suffering from things that they've been exposed to, unfortunately, and they don't know how to deal with it. And the health crisis starts to really spiral out of control, right?
I wonder if civilians get the same type of injury if they're being exposed to the blast. Let's say in Israel, where that happens pretty often.
Yep. So you're talking about a country that is constantly trying to protect itself, right? And you have poor civilians that are out there. Absolutely. If you're near an explosion, you're going to get it, right? So your body's you have the same effect. I call it military syndrome just because a lot of military guys are near explosions, but civilians can have that too. And then they can also develop the mental side effects of what's happening and the physical side effects of what's happening to their bodies, because a blast is a blast, just like a concussion is a concussion. But now you start talking about how it really affects the gut microbiome and how it affects your genetics, and then how it plays a part in mental health because your hormones are knocked off, right?
So the gut is the second brain, or brain is second gut. That's why they get affected concomitantly, right?
Yeah.
So let's say the person starts to develop the symptoms. They go to see their family doctor. They get misdiagnosed, probably, right? With
more than likely,
health.
yes.
Yeah, or maybe some endocrine disorder.
Yeah.
They're not being treated, right? So the symptoms don't go away. And then finally, hopefully, they find a practitioner who knows what's going on. And what happens next?
So basically what I do is typically they've had blood work done recently, right? And so then I start asking hard questions, have you done a genetic profile? And some of them have, some of them haven't, because I always tell people genetics are your keys to your health, right? It's a bunch of locked doors, right? Our genetics, and they can either open and do good for us or close and do bad, right? So you're trying to get out of a burning house, right? And the doors are all locked. I need the keys to unlock that, right? So your house is on fire, you're in metabolic syndrome, get the genetics. Then we start looking at food sensitivities. We start talking about, doing a brain mapping on them with QEEG to find out which areas are actually involved in the brain. We start talking about laser therapy for the brain, where I can actually go and tag those Brodmann's areas at those specific frequencies to try to help the brain actually calm down. We start talking about detox and how hyperbarics is the, kind of the groundbreaking OxyClean oxidizing agent out. So it's got to be able to get all that stuff out of there and break it down. And then we start talking about like sleep cycles and like the Aura Ring, where we're trying to keep their health kind of in the palm of their hands, literally, right? In the sense that I need to be able to see your sleep cycles. I need to see what your brain is doing when I don't see you for that hour and a half or 2 hours that day, right? And on the weekends, what are you doing? Like you have to hold yourself a little bit accountable in this deal. And if you can do that, then it builds me a whole picture, a whole puzzle of effectively what's going on with that individual and then how to best help them, right? Because I think the key that has gotten away from medicine is that individualized, how do we help that person the best way possible and not putting them in a cookie cutter model, right? So yeah, my approach is a little different and unique, but not really. We just use the same tools that the Mayo Clinic uses and Cleveland Clinic uses and Stanford and Harvard and all these big schools that have medical schools, but we're doing it in a more diagnostic physiological path than just straight pathology pathway, right? So I always tell people that pathology is real simple to me because I understand physiology really, really well. It's when physiology goes wrong is pathology, right? So let's just do the simple thing and reverse that pathology back to physiology, and we go back to homeostasis, right?
Which is the balanced state.
The balanced state, everything's working together, right? So we don't have that significant drop or climb to get to back to health, right? We get back to homeostasis and everything's level and even. And then now we get back to our harmonious lifestyle, right? Where you're able to lose weight the way you're supposed to, and diet and exercise and sleep, and everything comes back together, right?
So going back to epigenetics, from just purely from your experience, do you find that people with specific SNPs are more predisposed to develop severe, or let's say moderate to severe military syndrome?
Yeah, so exactly. So there are some genes that we're looking at right now that are people who are prone to more alpha variants, right? Mm-hmm. So now we're finding out that alpha is the mild cognitive impairment, the MCI discriminant that causes memory problems and looks and mimics vascular dementia, right? Mm-hmm. So if these people do have these genetics and these SNPs, these people are more prone to, if they're more sensitive actually to blast exposures, right? So if we know that, right, these are things that we have to really like monitor these individuals on a like more consistent value, because if they're an asset to the military, then we need to keep them, right? They're $6 million into training. We need to probably pay attention, right? And then there's people that don't have that, and they can get exposed to repeated exposures, and then they don't have as high of a sensitivity, right? So it all comes down to, do they have enough brain-derived neurotrophic factors, the BDNFs, and genetically, are they behind the curve or they're good, right? Do they produce enough dopamine or do they not? Do they, can they actually absorb the dopamine that they're producing, or is it just free floating out there, right? So we know that disease process happens when there's too much of something or not enough, right? So we have to play that balance role.
I wonder if we knew from the beginning. So let's say a person is in military and they do proper genetic testing. Let's say in a perfect world, and then they have all the SNPs. Could you maybe prevent that sensitivity by giving them supplements?
Absolutely. So because if your body's producing all the SNPs that it's supposed to do and your hormones are working like they're supposed to, maybe the blast only causes this much variation, where if you're not, that blast can cause this much variation, right? So now that it takes a lot of these to get to here, right? And if your body's constantly repairing, regenerating, restoring, we don't have that offset, right? That offset's not as bad, right? So now you took a blast, maybe this, now it's down to here. So the repeated exposures are not as dramatic as if you're not supplying this for them, right? And it's simple as vitamins and minerals and making sure that individuals getting what they need out of their food, right?
Absolutely. And probably hyperbarics, because we know that hyperbarics also upregulates and downregulates certain genes.
Right, right. And then on top of that, right, we know that delta wave is suppressed inside hyperbaric. So it's a gravity blanket of the brain, right? So we always want to put gravity blankets on people to calm them down with anxiety and PTSD and stuff like that. But I'm like, okay, you're not actually affecting the main organ that controls all this, which is your brain. And inside hyperbarics, we've done enough of these where we've actually been able to monitor delta wave activity. And we know that's why people get out there and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so good. It feels like I took a nap, but I didn't sleep. I'm like, yeah, because I down regulated delta on you. Whether you wanted it to or not, it's going to happen, right? And so now we talk about how that produces sleep hormones and how that whole cascade, a good cascade, goes down the road that way, right? So you stack that on through multiple therapies, and then you add the genetic SNPs in there, and then now in supplementation, now you're really going down a road that that patient can repair, regenerate, restore, and get back to a normal, healthy lifestyle like they were before they got into the military, right?
So it's almost like in any condition that we get, first we address the foundations of health, the pillars,
Right.
right? The
Right.
diet, correcting nutritional deficits and stuff like
Right.
that, and then we're adding therapies like hyperbarics. So how many sessions are people generally looking at with military syndrome? Hyperbaric
So
sessions.
it's interesting. So I've seen 50 sessions happen where people were totally normal again, where we've been able to do QEEG, biofeedback, take their blood work, like laser therapy, all that stuff, and then kind of combine those, stack those therapies on top of each other. And in 50 sessions, I've seen up to 202 sessions, right? So again, if they're genetically prone, typically takes a little longer, right? They need a little bit more help because they typically are not 25 or under when I get them, right? They're 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So we have to do a little bit more digging to get down to good dirt, right? And so it's a variable, right? And I just hate like these numbers that are thrown out there, like 40, like I'm like, no, guys, like I wish, right? I wish I was Nostradamus or Jesus, just be able to come down and anoint people at 40 sessions and everybody goes away, right? Everybody's happy again. And so it kind of drives me nuts when people ask me about numbers. I'm like, look, I'm not Jesus. I didn't die on the cross at 2021 years ago, and I'm not Nostradamus. I'm pretty good, but I'm not that good, right? So, yeah, don't get caught up on that number, and don't, it's about ultimately getting you to a point where your body's actually repairing, restoring, and regenerating, and getting you back on track.
But it's possible to achieve a complete recovery.
Absolutely, absolutely, right. So it's about finding out what's going on with you as an individual, and then once we can do that, then we can get you down a pathway to recovery, right? So that way you can keep your family. You're not, going through divorce, because the thing is, the wife or the spouse thinks that this individual's, just being mean or bullying. And I'm like, no, guys, like that's not the person you married, because they've been exposed to repeated explosions, right? And they've been living under constant chronic stress, right? So, yeah, you might have been living at home doing your thing, doing your daily jobs and your life and stuff like that, but their life has been under constant chronic fire, right? I mean, they have been living in a zone that most people collapse in, right? And they've been striving in that zone. That's where their brain, because they've been conditioned to, right? So we have to decondition that brain in a good way, and that they're now a civilian, right? And now they're back to normal lifestyle. They're not having to be on sympathetic overload all the time, right? Fight or flight. So
With many conditions, relapses are quite usual thing. Do people with military syndrome, let's say they've gone through therapy, they've received their, I don't know, 100 sessions of hyperbaric therapy, they go on with their normal life, and then can they relapse?
They can, because PTSD is weird in that, like, and let me give you the good examples, right? Remember when you were a kid, and for me, like, I ran track, right? So every spring, right, the smell of fresh cut grass, right? The olfactory nerve, cranial nerve number one, it remembers great things, but it also remembers if you smelt somebody that is decaying, right? Like a dead body, you remember that smell too. So I always use that example as like, your brain is tricky in the sense that, yes, we can fix you, but we cannot fix what your brain has smelt one time, right? Like, you can remember that smell when you were a kid at 9 years old at the baseball park or whatever it may be, right? And that's a smell that your brain never forgets. So I can't erase memories, right? But what I can do is I can get everything working in the right direction. That way, when you do smell that thing, or you do see that, a scenario that may flash back into your brain, right? That jump again, that gap is not as wide. So maybe that gap's only this wide now, right? So I can affect them in the sense that we're not going to go back to square one, right, where we started. But we might have some flashback type things that I just can't control, right? I can't fix memories, right? I wish I could, because I'd like to take away all the bad ones and just remember all the good ones, right? But unfortunately, those things are still kind of embedded, and it's actually, in the grand scheme of things, when you understand it on a neurological level, like I do, it's actually a good thing, right? So the limbic system holds on to pain or pleasure, and typically we don't want to go back to pain, right? We don't want to go back there. So the good news is, if I can get the body feeling right and I get the limbic system working right, even if they're getting in that situation where they might recognize something that triggers them, they know where they want to be at. They know where they don't want to go, right? So it's pretty simple that way, right?
So if they relapse, they come back for extra hyperbarics.
Maybe 10, 15 sessions. Maybe we put them on an alpha stem home unit where the anxiety, is not, we're able to control it at home with an electrical device that goes on the earlobes that calms the alpha down. When you calm alpha down, then it calms delta. They can sleep, right? So it might be something very, very, very simple that I can give them as a home device that they can take with them once they're actually fully repaired, and they can do self-treatment at home.
And probably, of course, this goes without saying that if they continue with healthy lifestyle, eating well, sleeping well, their chances of relapsing are much less.
Right. Exactly. Because all those are factors, right? So if we think that that's not, then we're fooling ourselves, right? And this is where modern medicine kind of comes in, and they don't talk about this, right? But as physicians, we have to talk about everything, right? We have to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is that it is diet, it is lifestyle, it is supplementation, So.
There are a lot of people out there who are suffering in silence. They don't know what's going on, and maybe they're listening now, and maybe they're ex-military. I don't know if you ever become ex-military, but they were military in the past.
And you're not suffering alone. And this is not quote unquote uncommon, because the amount of former military people that I've worked with and worked for as a physician, it's kind of scary to think that they've been, you sit down with a file and they have a file, 2 inches or 3 inches thick, 3 years of service. And you can clearly, when you know what you're looking at, you can kind of clearly see a pattern, right? Of just constant fall and of health. And then how that you can pick this person back up and get them back to a normal, healthy lifestyle, and maybe stop them from self-medicating and with alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be. And then get them to back to health, but also get them some professional help. Like get them to a group where they can talk and get them to, because mental health is important, right? So always tell them, man, you have sacrificed more for us than anything, right? So the least I can do as a physician is give you everything that you gave me, right? So it's a symbiotic relationship. You did something downrange, but I got to do something back range, right? So the back range work is that I can help you get back to a normal, healthy lifestyle again.
guys, if you like this episode, please give it likes because it would allow more people to see it. And if you know someone who might benefit from this information, please send them a link. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.